Welcome to the April 2025 edition of Boomer Music Experience with Dave, Scott, and Randy Halmo. Last month, we touched base on some of the biggest bands in the 1980s, and we were so overwhelmed, folks, that Randy and I decided to go to another level and talk about the Canadian bands in the 1980s. Such great names. There was Blue Rodeo, for instance, like one of our founding bands, Rush.
Yes.
5440, some great bands.
Yep.
But Randy's compiled a list for us. So, Randy, I'm going to turn it over to you and let's get started.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dave. Well, I've got to start off. I've got a picture of Celine Dion. It was taken November 7th, 1984, when she was only 16 years young.
Oh, wow.
Look at this. There she is.
Yeah, I can catch that.
16 years young, Celine Dion. And what I've done, Dave, for our audience, I've compiled a list of songs. I've got 50 of Canada's best songs, but for sake of time, I've whittled that down to about 15 songs. And with each song, I kind of describe the history and the makeup of each song. Very interesting comments here with each of the songs. The decade of the 60s, Canada. Here we go.
80s, sorry, correct.
Or 80s, I should say. Yeah. I need to clean the wax out of my right ear, Dave. Celine Dion, here we go. The 1980s, Canada. Celine Dion was only 19, but this little girl from small town Charlemagne's was a mission. She was definitely on a mission. Oh, yeah. No question about it. Newly signed on CBS and she's wearing sunglasses at night. This was really interesting. Incognito was the name of the song by Celine Dion. And it kind of announces the beginning of crossover music, not only for Canada, but the entire world. And in 1990, of course, she led the way to upstaging. She actually did upstage. She was the world's new pop diva. And that was just 1989 into 1990. Okay. So ironically, from that day on, of course, Dion was never again incognito. She became a major superstar in Canadian music, and the decade of the 80s was her punch decade. Absolutely. Next off, we have Bryan Adams. Of course, Bryan Adams, truly Canadian, the summer of 69. And don't underestimate the power of this song. It's about nostalgia for the year 1969, but it can still make you feel nostalgic for 1984. Oh, yes. Even if you haven't gone through a week without hearing it since it came out. Bryan Adams claims it's about a certain romantic maneuver, but every lyric suggests otherwise. And frankly, I don't want to think about the song as anything but innocent. It's a great song, and I think it is Bryan Adams' very best song. And he's brought out a lot of good songs for Canada and for the world.
It's his signature song, really.
Yeah, definitely his signature song. Next, we take a look at the band Rush.
Yes.
Rush, and specifically the song Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
The 1980s saw Rush. They continually pushed the prong of rock into more of a kind of a sci-fi,
progressive,
high-tech direction. But there is also a heavy reliance on sequencers too. So Tom Sawyer this song really stands as a perfect balance between the two sides of the spectrum. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big Rush guy, so Tom Sawyer's right there. It's classic Rush.
Yeah, and it's still one of the greatest rock songs of all time.
Easily.
That's right. Yep. Tom Sawyer, the band, Canadian band, Rush. Yes. Even if it didn't have Neil Peart's memorizing drum roll for 2.5 minutes.
Yes.
Oh, God.
You got to have that. You got to have that.
Next up, we have Martha and the Muffins.
Oh, Echo Beach.
Good Muffins, Echo Beach. Yep. Yeah. The shoulder shimming, the keyboard, tambourine, the blunt bob, and the pern. This was all part of the song Echo Beach and you are in the 1980s when you hear this song. Or maybe it's simply because Johnson, who is the lead singer, talks about being bored at work, longs for something far away in time. Oh, but wait, that applies to all the decades, doesn't it? Either way, there's no way your toes weren't tapping at this new wave generation song, Echo Beach by Martha and the Muffins.
I
And
love
I
that
like
song.
my cranberry muffins, thank you, with coffee, cream, and sugar.
It's kind of one of those fun songs of the 80s too. You know what I mean? Like it's
Oh, definitely.
very catchy, and you can sing along with it. I agree, 100%.
Yeah. And it's just a song that, Echo Beach, it's in your head. You
Yep,
hear it,
it's
it's in
stuck.
your head all the time.
Yeah.
It's there, you know? And, but good stuff for Martha and the Muffins. Next up, we have Corey Hart and the song Sunglasses at Night. Now, Sunglasses at Night was the coolest song ever in 1984.
Yeah.
It was the first record that really defined the 1980s for Corey Hart.
Yeah.
And like everything in this song has dance moves, it has just really everything, the soundtrack itself. And that's precisely why it is such an amazing song. The beat is awesome. The guitars in this song are really like buzzing in your ear.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It's a good buzz, not a bad buzz. But great song. Next, we have Platinum Blonde
Yes.
for the blondes.
You
Yes.
can't forget Platinum
Crying
Blonde.
Over You. In their early days, Platinum Blonde toured campuses as a police tribute band.
Oh,
Wow.
didn't know
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. But their big bleached hair and shoulder pads
Yeah.
were soon at the center of Canada's new wave of
Yeah.
music. Okay, bonus points for the guitar solo from Russia's Alex Lifeson too. Good stuff. Crying Over You, Platinum Blonde. Boy, lots of memories here, Dave.
Yeah, there is.
Next up, we have, and I have to mention this for Charlene because she's and Robertson, Somewhere Down the Crazy River by
Oh,
Robbie Robertson.
yeah.
And there is a connection between the Robertsons, her family, and Robbie Robertson. I found that out.
That's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, how good is that? It's only taken me 30 years to find it out. God, this could be said about a lot of the songs on this list, Robbie Robertson's, but it really doesn't get any more 80s than this. And not just the moodiness of this track, but it's kind of it's a fully sung chorus too.
Yeah.
And from the opening notes where the 80s drums kind of underpin the 80s bass line, it's a oh so 80s song complete.
Yeah.
Robbie Robertson, Somewhere Down the Crazy River. Oh boy. And yeah, Charlene has definite roots to Robbie Robertson. How good is that, Dave?
It's pretty cool. And it's one of those songs, like you said earlier, like it just gets in your head. And you just keep hearing that line over and over, somewhere down the crazy.
Yeah.
Like it just sticks with you, right?
Yeah, it
that was a big
resonates
one.
through the mind.
You bet.
Next up, we have Alana Miles and Black
Oh, yeah.
Velvet.
Black Velvet.
And of course, Black Velvet, it qualifies certainly as a song from the 80s. It was released in December of 1989. But when those blues notes open the track and Miles starts singing about Mississippi in the middle of a dry spell, it's undeniably that the song was meant for the decade of the 1980s. Absolutely. And don't pretend you didn't stand by your bedroom window belting out the words Black Velvet along with Miles while pining for that certain someone. You know, you may even bought the leather chaps. I don't know. But Alana Miles, Black Velvet, here again, this is a song that when you hear it, even if you hear it for the first time, It's a memory keeper.
Yep.
It's a toe tapper.
It's
And
an
you can hear it
eye-opener.
between the ears as though it was produced and written yesterday.
Yeah, it holds up.
Definitely a song for the 1980s Canadian style. Next off, we have Payola. The Payolas,
Yeah.
Eyes of a Stranger. The Payolas hit number 4 in Canada. I kind of disagree with that. This should be a number 1 song also. But they won a Juno Award. This is more of, Dave, more of a reggae influenced new wave song. And of course, you turn it up in the car and you make your passenger quiet down as you can hear Paul Hyde. And this is true. You can hear Paul Hyde hang on to the note, eyes of a stranger, eyes of
he
a
really
stranger.
draws it
It's
out,
almost unbearable. But it's part of the song, and it's a memory clincher. Eyes of the Stranger, the Payolas, from Canada, folks. Next off, we have Men Without Hats, Safety Dance.
Yeah.
This is another good one.
That was an odd video, I got to admit. I remember seeing the video going, this is really odd. But
it was.
Go ahead.
When you attended high school in Canada, anytime since 1982, there were 3 things you know for sure. The video for this song is truly wackadoo, wackadoo. The steps to some version, the steps to some version of the actual dance performed in the video. And here we have shades of Michael Jackson, but not. It's Canadian made. And if your friends don't dance, then they're no friends of mine.
Yeah.
How good is that? Safety Dance.
Yeah.
Men Without Hats.
I forgot about that song.
Next off, we have one of Canada's favorites, Neil Young. We're rocking in the free world.
Yeah.
And I know Scott Young, his father, was very proud of Neil Young's accomplishments. Well, he's still singing, he's still on tour, rocking in the free world. That defines Neil Young to a T. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Totally agree. And on that note, Neil just announced that he's doing a free concert in the Ukraine. Isn't that crazy? That guy has got, I'm going to say it, he's got balls. Like, he's not afraid to take on the establishment.
How good
I read
is
that he's doing a free concert in the Ukraine. And just when you hear Keep on Rocking in Free World, that hits right there, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
Like, that's
good for Neil.
Yeah,
good for him.
He's doing a European tour, and the first stop is going to be in the Ukraine. He's doing a free concert. And I just thought, that's why I love the guy, man. He just does what he thinks is right.
Not only a good rocker, but he represents Canada very, very well.
Yes, totally. Agree 100%.
Neil Young here. It's both a timeless song of a certain time.
Yeah.
And I think that says it all for this song right here, Dave. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree on that?
100%. And he's, coming through the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I think up to the 90s, really he had some, well, in 2000s, I know he had a few hits, but I mean, he's always sort of felt the pulse of the world, and especially Canadian people. You know what I mean? He always seems to drive that point home. I remember, This Bud's For You, when he was taking on all the commercialization of music, and he just always steps up to challenges, and that's what I think I appreciate about him, and he puts it in his music.
That's right. And the lyrics still hold up today, as you had mentioned, and yet they're firmly rooted in 1980s politics.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Unbelievable.
The worst part is it holds true to today. That, like you said, that song will hold up. It will resonate with what all the situations are in the world today. It's important.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And the rush this song gives you, it's always the same. Keep on rocking in the real world.
Yeah.
Neil Young, one of the best. Next off, we have Glass Tiger.
Yeah.
And Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone. The horns. The horns really make this song. Absolutely. That and the fact that it can be taught to just about any high school band in about 6 weeks. How good is that? the song itself, it's simple in structure and medley, but infinitely singable.
Yeah.
One of the gems of the decade of the 80s. Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone, Glass Tiger. Wow.
Great song.
Next song coming up, as I mentioned, we have about 50 songs, but I've selected the most memorable from what I can judge through my experiences, not only reading music, but also DJing as a professional DJ too. Next up, we have Kim Mitchell, Go for Soda. Yeah. You get the feeling, might as well go for a soda. Started off as a placeholder lyric, but it stuck around because the song and the lyrics, they're so simple but catchy.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree on that one, Dave, on this one? Go for Soda?
Go for a soda, and I would probably put Patio Lanterns above that. You know what I mean? Because that was one of the songs I felt that just, it had that simple guitar start, but it kind of reminded you of summer and what you wanted to do and to get outside, right? And enjoy the summer life that we get in Southern Ontario. But Patio Lanterns for me, but yeah, Go for a Soda too is right there.
Yeah. The song is a showcase of Kim Mitchell's guitar playing, certainly. And while he totally shreds, it's really understanding the intro of this song that is truly impressive. And I can certainly vouch for that. Another great song by Kim Mitchell, probably one of his best, Go for Soda.
Do you remember when they played the Port Dover Arena?
Let's see now.
They did. I'm not sure what year it was. I'm going to guess between
82 and 84.
No, it was probably in the 80. I'm going to go 87 on. So probably in between late 80s, early 90s, maybe mid 90s. He did a show.
Oh, yeah. 88, really, maybe. Yep.
Yeah. And I just remember, again, Patio Lanterns, just rocking the house.
Yep. Parachute Club, Rise Up.
Rise Up.
This is the sound of the 80s, the keyboard blurts, the digital influence of blending in with, lots of different instruments and sounds. There's a bit of new wave, a little bit of beginnings of hip hop, but it's a song that really fulfills its mission. It's a rallying cry to rise up, to be better, to live better, and to fight for your right and to be better in a soft rock dance way, of course. It's not a hard rock song at all. It's very soft rock, but once again, it's a mission. Rise up to be better, to live better, and to fight for the right of your cause, being Canadian.
Exactly. Nailed it.
That's excellent. Next, we have Luba.
Oh,
and when I first heard this song, and please forgive me on this, I thought she was American, Luba.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And but the song's entitled "Let It Go," and of course, she could compete with any of the U.S. Female artists also. What it would sound like if Daniel Langlois produced a calypso dance song for a Ukrainian-Canadian singer from Montreal in 1984? Well, yeah, Luba, she's Ukrainian.
Cool.
And it's a question that we've all asked ourselves on this particular song. The answer is this song helped Luba win not one, but 2 Juno Awards. And, honestly, it's a song that comes to mind whenever people talk about that other Let It Go from Frozen, the movie Frozen.
Oh, okay.
There's a direct comparison right there.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Next up, we have April Wine, Just Between You and Me.
Classic.
On the first day of MTV, when it went to air, Just Between You and Me was the first Canadian video on the broadcast. It's so Canadian that it even includes a French lesson. And it means seulement entre le mot. That's as good as I can get my French dialect going. But it means that our love will always be. And Hey, that's close enough to being correct, I would
Yeah.
think.
It's a great
Dave,
Canadian band.
share your thoughts.
Yeah, April Wine's just one of those classic Canadian bands that never goes away. You still hear their stuff all the time today. Love them.
Yep, darn right. Absolutely. Next up, we have Leonard Cohen.
Oh,
First, we take Manhattan.
Manhattan. Yes.
And he says they sentenced me to 20 years of boredom for trying to change the system from within. Is there a better opening line than that in First We Take Manhattan? And then, of course, the chorus. First we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what does that even mean? Is Cohen speaking of terrorism, the process of trying to break through as an artist? Both? The more you try to get the essence of what he's trying to say within his song, the more you appreciate what the man could do with some poetry and a cheesy, well, casino beat.
But that
Anyway,
line,
although
that
we
line,
prefer the funkier, liver version he created in 1988. First, we take Manhattan, Leonard Cohen. Great song.
oh, and that line just captures you. Like you want to know what that song's about as soon as you hear the first line. Like
Exactly.
and you're kind of instilled in it. You want to know what he's thinking, and he was a thinking man, obviously, and
Yep.
some of his stuff is brilliant. But that line just you're like, where's he going with this? What's this all about? Right? It's what he
Oh,
does.
yeah.
He makes you think.
Yep. Next up, we have Gino Vanelli
Oh,
and Black Cars.
black car.
Black Cars Look Better in the Shade follows the same logic as Corey Hart's Sunglasses at Night. Talking something dark and obscuring, it's even further. But it must have been an 80s thing because Black Cars were Gino Vanelli's, that song, highest charted song of the decade. Well done for
Oh,
Gino. And thanks to the catchy chorus and that cool organ that really makes the song.
it distinguished it.
Yep. Black Cars, Gino Vanelli. And we have, this is a good song too. The artist, Doug and the Slugs.
Is it making it
And
work?
the song is Making It Work. You got it, Making It Work.
Yeah.
And here again, once you hear this song, the lyrics are so catchy, you're singing it within seconds as you're hearing it at the same time. Now, this Vancouver party, out of Vancouver band, they started throwing their own parties because nobody wanted to book a band with such a weird name, Doug and the Slugs.
Makes sense.
Well, they made it work, and they made it work big time.
Yeah.
And it turned out a series of hit albums and singles. They were goofy, they were witty, lots of fun, and they are as Canadian as Toux and maple syrup.
You got that right.
Wouldn't you agree there, Dave, on that?
100%.
Absolutely. Now, I do have a couple of CDs that I purchased over the years. This one is focused on the Millennia collection. It's the best of Canada.
Okay.
And it's got some great songs on there. Just, I'll name a few. Tragically Hip, Locked in the Trunk of a Car.
Yeah.
Julie Black, 7-Day Fool. Nelly Furtado, I'm Like a Bird.
Furtado.
Get a chance to purchase this. This is well worth the money. Also, the CD Always and Ever Canadian. Always and Ever Canadian. Now, this takes a look at Canada, the songs of the decade of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. This is a really good CD to have, truly Canadian every step of the way, every song. And just briefly, Dave, I want to share with our audience the decade of the 90s, okay? We just mentioned Luba, Let It Go. Turn Me Loose, Loverboy.
Loverboy, yeah.
Another great song. New Girl Now, Honeymoon Suite.
Yeah.
These are some that I didn't mention earlier. Ian Thomas, Hold On.
Yeah.
Closer to the Heart, Rush.
Yeah.
What else have we got here?
Absolutely.
Broken Arrow, Robbie Robertson.
Yeah.
Eyes of a Stranger, we had mentioned that too. I Had It All, Colleen Pedersen. and Katie Lang's Black Coffee.
Oh yeah.
Haven't
Forgot about
heard of
Katie
that
Lang.
one yet. I'll
Yeah,
have to play
look
this.
that one up.
But these are just some of the songs of the decade of the 80s, Canadian songs on this CD. And the CD title for the 80s is called Turn Me Loose.
Yeah,
Turn Me Loose. Good
that's great.
CDs to listen to.
On
And
the
to kind of end the program, Dave, I want to share with our listeners, it's a book put out by Gordon Lightfoot, and no more. There's no artist out there that is
no.
more Canadian than Gordon Lightfoot, but it's Gordon Lightfoot, book, music, and much, much more. What happened back in the year 2009? There was a 2-hour documentary that aired on Gordon Lightfoot, the book, the music, and more. And it was released on DVD that same year, 2009. And what it does, it looks at the digital age of Canadian music in the 1980s, a visual era of big hair and shoulder pads, when music videos helped homegrown artists to take off on an international basis. The documentary is split into 9 different segments of different musical types like reggae, video rock, new wave, so on and so forth. And there's a number of songs. There's about 100 songs on this playlist. A lot we have just mentioned in our dialogue there with the description of some of the songs that I've just mentioned out of the 50 top Canadian songs.
Yep.
But I would love to get a DVD video of this. Gordon Lightfoot, book, music, and more. That would be a great TV to preview and to see, because as we both know, anything that Gordon Lightfoot does, he puts his whole heart and soul into it, and much, much more. Gordon Lightfoot.
Always did. Yeah, for sure. You always did.
That's excellent.
I got a couple bands I'm going to mention just from the 80s that I think that we were talking off air a little bit about what I remember. And I brought up 5440, saw them about a year and a half ago at the Horseshoe in Toronto. Still
yes.
had it. Still had it. Sounded incredible. The BC band, just those guys are just phenomenal. They're one of those groups. Early on, one of my first big groups I saw at high school and imported over at PDCS, believe it or not, was the Kings. They came to our high school and switched into Glide, and it was just one of those bands that I've always followed. You know what I mean? After, again, in that 79, 80, they were in the early 80s. They were kind of, that band that you wanted to sort of keep an eye on. I just like the music. Another band I haven't seen, but I wish I would have, is the Headpins. I always thought they were one of those.
Yes. Yep.
And Trooper came out in 75, but Trooper always was, you knew they were Canadian. They had that feel. Big Sugar in the late 80s was another band. They're still going today. The Northern Pikes, a great band, great Canadian band, came out in 84. Like there was, I mean, you and I were just, touching base on some of these. Rough Trade, Carol Pope, Rough Trade.
Yeah.
I saw them live, and, High School Confidential, right? They all this music that was just coming our way. I don't think we realized what it was like. Blue Rodeo was another one. I had an opportunity. I think it was the early 2000s. Maybe the 90s. I had an opportunity at the Sky Dome to see, which was incredible. Blue Rodeo opened for Gordon Lightfoot, opened for Simon and Garfunkel. So I got a double Canadian bill there, and plus Simon and Garfunkel. But Blue Rodeo, I think too, has done so much for Canadian music.
A lot of good memories there for you, Dave.
Yeah, exactly, right. But some of the bands, I think if you get an opportunity, and I think there is somewhat of a comeback. I think there will be this summer, especially. Go see those great Canadian bands, folks, while you can, because the music they created in the 80s that still holds up, like you and I talked about today, is phenomenal. It's incredible. I got one question for you too. Oh, Teenage Head. We almost forgot Teenage Head too. With that era of the 80s, do you think, up to the point with Celine Dion and then Tom Cochrane, Red Rider, Life is a Highway, it kind of blew up in the American stratosphere. It must have been hard for Canadian bands to get that foot into the States at that time. I remember, watching shows, and they couldn't, obviously with the music videos coming out, sure. I think of Triumph, like they had a great stage show, so their videos did well. But was it hard for Canadian bands to break into the US in the 80s?
Uh, yeah, I would say so, Dave. I think, though, by the 84, 85, the mid 80s, um, even before that, but those 2 years in the decade of the 80s really saw a tremendous, uh, volume of music put out by our Canadian artists, and it really created for Canada, for our artists, both male, female, and bands, an international music awakening of music from Canada.
Ah, I like that.
Major,
Yeah,
big time.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
I do agree with you on that. I wonder if we were more regional in our music at that point in
Hmm.
the early 80s because you seem to know a lot more of the bands that were in your stratosphere, like in Southern Ontario, or
Yes,
you seem to know
absolutely.
there was more of a, oh, I got to go see this band. They're here. They're upcoming, right?
Hmm.
You pretty much would find out who they were and you'd go see them. I wonder if that's kind of left, I think, a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, you
Hmm.
can go online and find music anywhere, but there was
Hmm.
always something in those early days about going to a live show, right?
That's right.
You wanted to feel the music to understand who this band was and what they
Hmm.
were creating.
Yeah, and
And
the energy of the music that
right,
each rock group
yes,
provided, you
right.
were right there experiencing that vibe, that rush in the moment.
Yeah, I remember early on, one of the first bands I saw at the CNE was Triumph,
Mhm.
and just fell in love with the band at that point because I was just
Yeah.
blown away how good they were. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And how tight they were as a Canadian band. And I think that's the other point is
Hmm.
we were kind of underappreciated maybe in the 70s. We had a lot of great bands then, but maybe as a country musically we were underappreciated a bit because like
Hmm.
you said, when we finally broke through, wow, did
Yeah.
we break through, right? The Canadian bands were just like you brought up Loverboy, for example, like Rush, like, we
Hmm.
were just there and our music was sustainable then to the American public.
Hmm.
Maybe we just wanted to be accepted. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I think that's something maybe we'll see getting back to with such a change in the political environment. Maybe we'll see people going to see more Canadian bands. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
taking
Good
in that
point, Dave.
music
Well
and
taken.
enjoying
Good
it.
point.
But
Yeah.
and they, like you said, I mean, I'd highly recommend 5440 because they played all the hits. They sounded fantastic, which these guys
Hmm.
have been around since, I don't know, early 80s, I think, probably late 70s knowing these guys, but that's the
Hmm.
kind of band where you're just like, wow, they still have that same sound. They're still sounding that good.
That's right.
And that's not easy to do over 30, 40 years, right?
Certainly is not.
Yeah,
And
since
just
1981.
to make a quick mention, two of our country artists who have done extremely well in the many decades and have represented Canada well, and even to this day still, Shania Twain
Oh yeah.
and Annie Murray. Anne
Yep.
Murray.
Both of them,
Yep.
exactly. Crossover music that could
Right
you
on.
play
Yep.
anywhere, which was kind of, and people just loved it. They lapped it up.
And
Um,
Shania Twain and also Anne Murray, they still look really good. They're
yeah.
in good shape for their ages. They look years younger than their physical age.
In all that Canadian music in the 80s, did you recognize or did you see a sound that was Canadian? I know that's a weird question because you're going from Rush you
Hmm.
know, to Celine Dion, but I always felt there was a feel that you knew it was a Canadian artist. I don't know why I felt that. Maybe it's just because I assumed that they were Canadian. Maybe I was listening to obviously a lot of Canadian radio back then, but I mean, it's
Hmm.
kind of, there's always something like you said, it sort of sets it
Yeah,
apart
you
a little
can't.
bit,
That's right, Dave. You can't really put your finger on it, but
right?
it's there. It's definitely Canadian music, and it's there. It's different,
So,
but it's a good different.
right. What would be, as a DJ, what maybe could you give us a couple songs that are always requested from the 80s that are just like, here we go, you know that group, if you're playing a party or a dance and it's
Hmm.
a lot of folks that maybe are in my age group or a little bit younger, they're requesting a lot of the 80s stuff. What are you hearing? What's one of the big requests there?
Well, I would say just on the one page there alone, um, Kim Mitchell's "Go for Soda."
Oh, really?
That's a
Yeah.
guaranteed dance floor filler.
Wow,
all the time.
That caught me.
Guaranteed.
I didn't see that one coming, but yeah, that makes sense. I guess you look at patio lanterns, it's maybe more of a little slower dance, right?
Patio lanterns. Yeah,
Yeah,
another good song. Um, yeah, like
that's a
I
good.
would say that the most between that Gopher Soda, patio lanterns, those would be two songs that guaranteed fill the
Yeah,
dance floor all the time.
it's
No
a
question about it.
yeah,
And of course, Rush,
yeah.
they've got some good
They've got
songs there. Rick Springfield,
okay.
Jesse's Girl.
Yeah, it's a
I
big '80s
remember,
too.
speaking of that, Rick Springfield, I remember dancing to that in the mid 80s at Marco's Landing,
Oh, yeah, there
downtown
you go.
Norfolk Street
Yeah,
South,
I
right
forgot
across
about
from
that.
Carter's Menswear. Boy, those are memories, I'll tell you. But yeah, Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl. I was out on that dance floor. I just grabbed any gal there and we went, come on, would you care to dance? I love this song. Let's dance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Boom.
you were a
Love it.
dancing machine,
I
weren't
didn't
you,
know her
in
from
the
Adam.
'80s?
She didn't know me from Adam. So it worked out. But we
Yeah,
weren't Adam and Eve.
and
Yeah.
Sheriff had a big hit. Remember Sheriff too? Like there's so many bands
Yep.
we could go back
Oh,
to.
yeah.
So
Yep.
that that slow ballad, but yeah, it's this great show. I really enjoyed doing this because it brought back a lot of memories for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I do appreciate you taking the time to look up all this information, step back in time with me to the 1980s and Canadian rock and roll. Thanks for doing this, Randy.
Thanks very much, Dave. Enjoyed it. And we look forward to seeing you next month with the new topic. Until then, stay safe. God bless. And music is the answer. That's music is international language to the world.